right. Welcome to Modern Pipeliner with Tim Bridges, and our guest today is going to be David Walter. You will know him from Steam Powered Consulting, and he also has some other special surprises that we can talk about later on in the show today. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Tim. Pleased to be on the show.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've sent you over some questions, which we'll come back through, and it should be a pretty easygoing little deal here.
Okay.
We like to focus on energy industry interviews. So it's people that are modernizing and taking some of the tech that we have now and making the best of it to help benefit our energy industry and other industries as well.
Okay.
To get the show kicked off, let's ask you a little bit of questions about your story. What's your resume and how did you get to here?
Okay. All right. I started life as a weapons engineer in nuclear submarines, and that was at the tail end of the Cold War. I cross-threaded from there into diesel boats and ended up finishing my career in diesel submarine special ops. And then after that, I ended up in the nuclear power industry in Canada doing emergency management consulting. And from there, I ended up joining one of the multinational oil and gas companies as the head of market support for their gas turbine fleet in North and South America. And I did that for about 10 years, relocated from the UK back to the US, took over the US division for small gas turbines. And then a couple of years ago, I had enough of the corporate world and went out on my own and set up the business consultancy. So now I primarily specialize in helping engineering technology companies sort out their business processes to maximize revenue, profits, and then the residual value of the business.
Very good. Very impressive, Dave. Very good. When did you become passionate about your focus in energy?
I think working from the nuclear industry, obviously nuclear has got a bad rep or a bad rap, which it doesn't really deserve. Nuclear is very clean energy,
right?
If you can do two things: operate the plant safely and with integrity, and also manage the business case for the disposal of the spent fuel. And if you can do both of those, nuclear is a very credible energy source. And it's, as I say, it's got an unnecessarily bad press. And if you look where we are today, the same thing's happening in fossil. Fossil can be clean energy. Fossil is essential. We're kidding ourselves if we think we can do it with solar and wind. But the political climate is such that fossil is bad. We want to get rid of it. But the reality is, if we turn off fossil, we kill our economy. Fossil's here to stay, no matter how politically unacceptable that may be. And the trick is, how can we use fossil in a clean way? And even if you look at coal plants can be clean. Sure. Certainly, if you look at the gas turbine world, where when I was involved in, gas turbines running on natural gas and clean gas are a very clean source of power. So it's an unnecessary hysteria in the political climate that is against fossil, which is really self-defeating for everybody. We're not going to get, we could turn fossil off and we'll go back to the Stone Age.
Right.
That's not the best thing for our society.
Right.
So where fossil is a problem, where there is pollution issues, then let's deal with them. But don't just turn fossil off without having a viable replacement. And the reality is, wind and solar are not viable replacements. It was in the gas turbine world, whenever you put up a wind farm, you've got to have gas turbines on standby.
Yeah.
And of course, most of the gas turbines in the power gen space are designed for base load operation. So they're cleanest, most efficient when they're running base load. The smaller turbines I used to look after, we would be typically inside the wire. So it's local generation systems inside the plant or inside a facility. And they were designed to turn on the 1st of January, run them up to base load, and then leave them running non-stop for 97% of their time. Our criteria was base load, 97% availability. And at that point, they are very clean, very efficient engines. When you try and make a base load unit go into load following, then you screw up the efficiency. You end up getting carbon deposits on the burners. You end up with all sorts of wear and tear problems on the turbine. And so we have this illusion that when the wind blows, we can just turn the turbines down and everything's fine. You're actually making more pollution when you turn the turbine down and running at a 10-15% load than letting it run where it's supposed to be at base load.
Wow.
It's nonsensical, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Just trying to make a difference in the industry, and just talking about these items here will help enlighten others.
Yeah.
When you first started, what was something that you found was more challenging than you had expected?
When I got into the gas turbine industry, I was expecting it to be pure engineering, and we were in the market support group, so it was the maintenance and the engineering. What took me a bit of time to get my head around was people making bizarre, non-valid technical decisions.
Yeah.
Either I can understand the commercial side, but some of them, they were just prejudiced, they were political, they were cultural. I said, why are these guys doing this? It took me a long time, especially being ex-military.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to say that was a real BS decision that my client has just made, and now I've got to work it through as to how we can support them to keep going, having just made a not the best decision. When you took out the pure black and white of the technical decision and mix in cultural issues and commercial issues and human issues,
Yeah.
that took me a bit of time to get my head around.
Yeah. The human issue of all this stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my. Yeah, I deal with that heavily in recruitment and staffing and just finding these people to go do these projects. The human element can really wow you sometimes.
Absolutely.
What good life lessons have you learned from your industry?
I think it's the opposite of what I just said was the most difficult. Having seen people making decisions which from a technical basis made no sense, to still having them as clients and having to support them, made me have to rethink how I did business.
Yeah.
So but I had a couple of clients I just could not understand why they were making the decisions they made. So I had to do a lot of work to get my mind into their space to understand
Right.
their position. And then when I understood that position, okay, it's still maybe not the best decision, but at least there's a bit more logic or a bit more rationale. So it made me, from, as I say, instead of the military shitting it, this is the way we need to do it. It's okay, right? Why are they making that? What do I need to understand that I'm missing here,
Yeah.
so I can best support that client in their journey? And that was a good lesson to have, because it made me certainly think about how I did business in a much more, I won't say warm and fuzzy. I never consider myself to be warm and fuzzy, but it made me think about the story from their perspective, not my perspective.
Yeah, and I've dealt with a lot of corporate bureaucracies and acquisitions and buyouts and all kinds of things, and adding new divisions to companies, and man, all those different perspectives and things. It really makes you grow as a person yourself, dealing with all those different parts and pieces moving.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So what coworkers were the greatest contributors to your character?
The military, I had some absolutely brilliant COs, and they motivated the team that we'd have sailed to the very gates of hell and back and been very comfortable going there. And then in a similar position, I've had absolute tyrants and people that were incompetent, completely incompetent for the role they're in. It was the old corporate promote to the point of failure.
Yeah.
But in this case, they promoted them to the point of failure and then gave them a submarine to go and play with. So that was a very scary position. I think the lesson from that one is, just because you've got the rank or just because you've got the title doesn't mean you know what you're doing. And I experienced that again in the corporate world. The concept of promote to failure is a really dumb way of running a company.
Yeah.
And I've seen it now with, so the way I've rationalized it was, somebody told me, said, you've got to remember that 50% of CEOs are below average.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a very fair point, because we think about the guy in the corner office that knows everything he's doing, but the reality is 50% of them are below average. And if you're unfortunate to get one that's below the line, they can make life really difficult for you.
Yeah.
But you've got to play the hand you dealt.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes people know somebody and that's how they get into that spot when it may not be the spot for them. I'm watching a potential client of mine right now where some easy play moves, they could be making double their revenues.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they'll just keep chopping their foot off. But yeah, I hear you on that. What was your worst and best project?
Okay. My best project was going back to the military days. That was taking HMS Opportune through refit. So she was a 25-year-old diesel boat. I joined her just after she'd been stripped out. So she was literally an empty, rusty steel tube. And my job was to shoehorn a nuclear quality weapon system into a 25-year-old diesel boat.
Wow.
And 18 months later, we did that. And we took her to sea. We got her operational. And we actually went against the nuclear submarine I'd just left previously, which was at the time Britain's latest and greatest hunter killer. And we had a 48-hour anti-submarine warfare exercise. And our poor old 25-year-old rusty diesel boat, we lost the war by one shot. So we lost 6-7.
Oh.
But considering that we were a 25-year-old boat with half the crew,
yeah,
compared to this 2-year-old nuclear boat with very big, very sophisticated crew,
yeah,
I felt that was a very honourable score.
Very
So
cool.
That was a great project.
Very cool.
The worst project I've had, there are several, so I can't put my finger on one. I've just seen so many crazy projects that I used to, in the corporate world, I had the moniker, the project hand grenade.
Okay.
So when a project was about to fall off the track, my boss would invite me to volunteer to go and parachute into the middle of it.
Nice.
And then pull the pin and see what happened after that.
Yeah.
That was fun. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But it was interesting to go in when the wheels were about to fall off and see if I could shoehorn this thing back on track.
No, I love it. I can recall going into a project young in my career and just the thing going way out of scope and having to go hunt down a couple hundred extra K. And when you go to a general contractor with that, a union one at that, good luck.
Absolutely.
And so they gave me a playroom of, let's say, 30%. If you come back with 30% of that, we can survive.
Yep.
And I wound up coming back with 70% and gave them
done.
30 off. And so both parties were really happy. But yeah, some of those worst projects teach you some really great little lessons in there. But nobody ever wants to talk about them. And then all that insight that you gain there, it stays with you, unless we share it.
Yep.
But not many do. And that's why I thought it'd be a good question to ask here. So what is something about the industry that has surprised you lately?
Can I swear?
Sure.
The thing that gets me at the moment is all the bullshit about climate change and no fossil. There is no science behind it. And we are killing ourselves. 3 years ago, we were energy independent. We were the greatest producer on the planet. 2 years later, I think I saw an article that said we are within 28 days of running out of diesel.
Yeah.
What the hell did we do? What the hell happened?
Yeah.
That just makes no sense to me. And I'm an engineer by training, and I have yet to see a credible, valid scientific argument that says that man-made climate change is a real thing.
Yeah.
I fully agree that climate change is happening, and it's always happened in the history of the planet.
Yeah.
But the reality that man-made climate change is causing us all to die. I saw a very interesting article. I think for the last 25 years or the last 30 years, Time magazine has had at least once a year we're all going to die because of global warming, global cooling, global flood rising, global sea. It is. And guess what? And they're all saying we're going to be dead within 10 years unless we do something. That was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're still here. And I just lose any trust in the political narrative, and the engineering and the science in my mind just doesn't back it up.
Yeah. It became like a sad thing to even talk about because it's almost like a no discussion point.
Absolutely. Yeah, the science is settled. Well, that's BS. There are thousands of scientists that disagree with the narrative. Yeah. For me, just to give you a side story, after I finished working in the nuclear power industry, I did a lot of emergency management consulting. And I did a risk assessment for one of the major cities in Canada. And they had some unusual things. This particular city had and again, it's pure accident. It was a fuel cell manufacturing facility for the CANDU reactors. And it was actually inside the city limits. And It was upwind. It was like 2 kilometers away from City Hall. The reality is what they were using for the nuclear fuel was very low grade. If you spilled it, the cleanup was to get a dustpan and brush and just brush this stuff into the pan and put it back into the barrel. Very low grade uranium hexafluoride, I think. But if that had ever let go, the downtown city, there would have been all history. Oh, we've got all this nuclear waste and everything. But when you did the risk assessment, the biggest single threat to people in that community was the air quality in the summer. They used to get the lake effect. The pollution would sit over the city. And I would notice when I went from my office, which was north of the city, downtown, my eyes would be streaming, my throat was burning. And they said that they were in the height of the summer, when the pollution was worse, there were, I think the analysis were like 3 or 4 elderly people or people with compromised respiratory systems were dying because of this.
Yeah.
But because of the politics, they wouldn't report that. They couldn't do anything about it. If you look at it from a global perspective, global pollution is a much greater risk to human health than this alleged man-made climate change. But they don't want to talk about pollution because that affects the profit line.
Well, yeah, we could go on with this for a while, I imagine.
I'm going to get banned from YouTube and everywhere. I don't think you're ever going to be able to publish this.
No, they won't hate me that much. Oh, shoot. So what big projects are on the horizon?
Okay, so the two, as I told you, we set up the consulting. So my focus at the moment on the consulting side is really reaching out to help engineering and technology companies get a real handle on their business growth. So I look in 3 areas. So increasing revenue, increasing profit, and then a place where I would say 99% of business owners really miss the bus is creating retained value. Value of a business, tragedy is 98% of business exits have a near zero value because the owners don't know how to retain value and they don't know how to package their business to sell it. So when they come to sell, it's too little too late. They get virtually nothing for it. But most business owners aren't thinking about selling in 5 or 10 years. They're thinking about, how do I get more revenue? How do I get more profit? So they're thinking about today and tomorrow, not 5 years down the road. So what I like to do is give them a program. Okay, first off, we're going to look at increasing your revenue. Then once we've got your revenue going in the right direction, we're going to look at maximizing your profit. And then when we've got that in hand, we're going to show you how you can retain that profit or how you can embed that value in the business so that when you do want to exit, you've actually got something to sell. And the stuff that we do for the day-to-day revenue and profit is stuff that we do anyway to prepare a business for sale. So you may as well have the benefit from it now and not do that in 5 years, just when you get ready to sell. So that's my big drive for 2023, especially if people are getting twitchy about the economy. Learning how to maximize your profit and minimize your costs and keep generating revenue in a tough market is a survival skill that all businesses need to have. So that's the big issue on the consulting side. And then on the manufacturing side, as I mentioned, I'm COO of a manufacturing company, and we are just about to get our production operation up and running. We've spent several months translating what was a laboratory solution and then rebuilding that, redesigning that into a production environment. But all being well, in the next 2 to 4 weeks, we should be into production. And then we are going to be producing the world's first all-metal 3D filament for 3D printers. And from the lab tests we did, the product that we have is 80 times more conductive than the nearest competitor. So what that means, if you're in the prototyping game, or if you're in the low volume electronics game, you can actually print your circuit board. So this is where it's a real winner. We've got NASA snapping at our heels saying, hey, as soon as you're ready, we want this stuff.
Yeah.
If you're into low volume prototyping, typically you would design the circuit board, you'd send it off to a PCB manufacturer. They would have a minimum order run of say 25 units and 4 to 6 weeks turnaround. So you send your order in, you get 25 units when you actually only need 1 because you're testing a prototype. You get that unit back and then realize that after a couple of days of testing, you need to change it. So you then change the design, you send it back to the manufacturer. It's a sort of 6 to 8 week turnaround, each iteration of your PCB. with the ability to print your own PCBs. You could design it in the morning, put it into your 3D printer program in the afternoon, create the slice diagrams and everything, let it print overnight. The next morning you can test it, realize that you've got to make changes, and the following evening you're printing the second version of it. We can reduce the cycle time from 8 weeks down to 2 days.
Wow.
And we can reduce the prototyping cost from 25 units to 1 unit at a time. So it's a huge boon for anybody that's into low volume electronics. And as I say, we're just about to get this stuff market, and then we'll be really pushing this because it can really, really help American manufacturing, because rather than need huge, big, complex factories, anybody with a decent quality twin head 3D printer can actually start producing electronics at a fraction of the cost of what it would take to export or to offshore. So we're really excited about this. We've just got to finish off our migration from a lab setup to a full production setup.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm so glad to hear stories like this. But yeah, that's a game changer right there, Dave.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, no, we are very excited. It's just that we're stuff or issues that you don't see in a laboratory setup when you try to scale up. Things that you hadn't anticipated come snapping at your ankles.
Yeah.
We've been dealing with those issues for several months now, but we're damnably close to having this stuff into production.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, you'll have to send me some links or something. And
yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Our next question is, what is your vision for the next 5, 10, let's say 50 years into the future for energy?
Okay.
And this is all hypothetical, right?
Sure. Okay. So I think the first thing is we've got to get real, and we've got to get the politics and the BS out of the narrative and say that if we are going to survive as an industrial economy, we've got to re-embrace fossil. And as I said, fossil can be used very cleanly and very efficiently. I think if we're going to be honest with ourselves, we need to look at the issues of global pollution, especially microplastics in the ocean and in the rivers. That is a real health concern that people are not jumping on. When you look at the pollution that's coming out of developing countries, that needs to be addressed. So if we're going to help them, let's help them grow in a clean way, not in a way that they're poisoning their population and the population of the neighboring countries. And then small nuclear plants, again, if they're run safely, and you can design them now so they're pretty much self-contained, you can look at small nuclear plants that will give you energy you need. And then after that, I think solar power does have a place. Some of the gas turbines we used to work on were part of these solar boiler plants. I think out in California, they were using huge mirror arrays to heat up the water to make the steam to drive the turbines. The environmental downside is you created this sort of thermal bubble, and any wildlife that flew into it just got fried instantly. So there was a negative environmental impact with that. When you look at solar power, so some of the solar panels, like I think there's a company in the Netherlands that are making solar arrays that you can use for road surfaces. Okay, so the idea, and I think this is in the concept, I don't think they've fully developed it, but one of the ideas which I thought was very smart was you place all your road surfaces with this solar surface that generates the electricity, and then through magnetic charging coils, the vehicle can be recharged as it's actually going across the surface. So I thought that was cool. The other thing is battery technology. There is not enough lithium, there's not enough rare earth on the planet to convert all of the gas vehicles into electric vehicles. Now, I know there's one guy, he was in a business incubator close to the company that I was working with, and he's looking at creating calcium chloride batteries on a large scale. So I think he's got prototypes that he can actually power an 18-wheeler using calcium chloride batteries, which are obviously cheap. You don't have the dangers of lithium, you don't need all the rare earth. And I think if we can get battery technology where it needs to be, then solar and electrical power's got legs. Also hydrogen. Now, obviously, hydrogen as an energy storage vehicle went down the road when the Hindenburg burnt out. But that is again, if you can have a contained, safe environment, using hydrogen for fuel cells has got a lot of legs to it. And then hydrogen is very clean. You can convert your water to hydrogen. So you're basically electrolyzing the water, you release the oxygen, pump your hydrogen into the fuel cell. The fuel cell works to then turn the hydrogen to electricity. The output is just water again, so it's zero. With technology and automation and containment systems, you can now make that a safe technology. So I think hydrogen cells, fuel cell, solar generation, solar transmission, and battery technology is certainly where we need to be focusing in the future. But the reality still is you can't make the batteries, you can't make the cars, you can't make all that stuff unless you've got a good, safe, effective hydrocarbon industry to back it up.
I concur. Yeah. Well said, sir. Very well said.
Thank you.
We're coming down to the last few minutes here, but let me see. We've got, what is something positive about you outside of work that most familiar with your work wouldn't know?
Okay. So I recently had a very passionate love affair with Argentine tango.
Okay.
So I dance traditional Argentine tango about 3 times a week.
Awesome.
And I'm a member of the Houston Tango community. If you look at tango as a dance, purely as the dance, it is one of the most, in my mind, one of the most sophisticated dances because everything is completely improvised.
Okay.
Unlike ballroom and everything else, where people can practice the moves and there's set moves and there's standard dances, in traditional, what you call tango, you can actually connect with a dance partner without saying a word. So there's a technique in Argentine tango where it's called the cabeceo, where you can invite somebody to dance just by eye contact and nodding your head and things like that. So you meet on the dance floor. Traditionally, you don't speak when you're dancing in a milonga. And you dance typically 3 or 4 songs in a set, so in what's called a tanda. So you can go to one of these dances, connect with somebody you've never met in your life before, invite them to dance 4 songs completely improvised to the music, and then at the end of it find you don't even speak the same language, but you've just spent 12 minutes creating this completely improvised, very sensual, very connected dance. And as the leader, you've got a lot, and this is why I think a lot of engineers, a lot of professional people like tango, because as the leader, you have to think about moving your own body. You have to think about if you move your body, because again, tango is traditionally danced in what's called the close embrace. So the way that you move your body as the leader causes the follower to move her body in a different way. You have to do that in time to the music, because obviously you've got to be respectful of the music. And also you're doing this in a crowded room where you could have 20 couples all going around at the same time. And so you've got to do that in synchronization with what all the other dancers are doing. So it's like 4D chess into music while you're having a hug with a gorgeous dancer. So awesome. What is there not to like about that?
Sure. No, that's very cool. Yeah, I think a lot of people would be impressed to know that you're involved in tango like this.
Yeah.
Oh my. Now, wrapping up here, we've got couple more minutes here. I just want to maybe skip my question and go to do you have any book or products that we can help promote? I know we already talked about one there. And then what is the best way for the audience to support you and your company and get in contact?
If anybody, one of the things I'm doing is, as we're coming to the end of the year, I know a lot of companies are a bit nervous about 2023. I've got my book of business is pretty full at the moment, so I don't need to spend a lot of time marketing. So what I've said to people is, if you want a free consult just to have a chat about what your growth plans are, what your marketing plans are for 2023, just grab some time with me, let me know what you're doing, and we'll set up a call, and I'm happy to run a free consult. The way to connect with me is either through my LinkedIn profile or steampowerconsulting.com/let's talk, and I'd be happy to give anybody a free consult if they're concerned about their marketing strategy for 2023.
That's great, Dave. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put these links in there, and then when we share it, we'll have connections for you for them to go straight to come talk to you.
That would be great.
All right, Dave. Hey, thanks for stopping by with us today, and I'm sure I'll catch up with you here soon, and we'll be in touch.
Tim, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, mate.
All right, Dave. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.